I want to try and tell you a quick story about my experiences as a police sergeant in the last agency that I worked at. I had been a new sergeant with that agency, I don't know, maybe a year or two. I had been a sergeant before, but this was a new agency. So I had a very young team of male officers that I was supervising, and it was a graveyard shift, meaning nighttime. And through prior years, they had self-selected an informal leader, and this guy was really charismatic. He was a good officer. He knew his work, and he had been through somewhat of a personal crisis, and had started to kind of change his behavior. And of course, nobody really paid much attention to that because most of the time, you want your police officers to just do their job. So one night, I'd started to see some difficulty with this team. Again, I'm the only female. I'm their supervisor. The other supervisor was off doing I don't know what. So with this team, I started noticing that there was some really unusual behavior. And this is before I'm really well versed in social psychology. What happens is one night I'm reading reports and it's very, very quiet. Um, it's what you would call too quiet. So I look at the computer screen and I can tell that there's a group of them in one area and then a couple of them in another area. So I decide to go out in my patrol car and find out what's going on. I pull up to the one area and there are two cop cars pulled window to window, driver's window to driver's window, so nose to butt on the patrol cars. And both officers are sound asleep. So this is probably like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning behind a church, and they're completely asleep. I'm furious. One thing that's so incredibly dangerous, but the other thing that's a waste of taxpayers' money. So I take my fists and I get in between the two cars and I bang on the car and I go, "Get your butts back to the PD," and I take off. Hindsight, that's probably a stupid thing to do because they were dead asleep and certainly armed, as was I, and we probably could have shot each other because they were startled. So I go off to the next location, and I get there in time to see one officer that is in his patrol car outside watching. And as I walk in that building, I catch two of them getting up from the bed that they had made on a couch or by a desk. And they were also asleep. So basically, I had caught 5 of the 7-member team asleep for, I'm sure, hours. So I contacted my commander, who was asleep in his bed at home, and I said, "I need some help here. I have a problem with this team. I caught them, almost all of them asleep, and I need to discipline them." Well, this is now 3:30 in the morning, and he doesn't show up until briefing, which is at 7:30. And I can remember standing in front of these 7 young men with the commander sitting at the desk by me. And he says, having not talked to me at all about this, he says to the guys, "Well, we've decided that this is a bad thing, but we really don't want to put anything on your record, so we're just going to give you a verbal warning." And the look I'm sure I had on my face was completely inconsistent with what he was saying to them. Because as you are well aware, if you do not have consequences for something like that, the behavior continues, which it did. Now I turned to my commander after they left and I said, "You just completely eliminated any power of supervision that I would have with this team, 1. And 2, you will see this behavior, but it will be much worse years down the road." Which is probably why I wasn't promoted to commander much later. Anyway, I spent 2 years with that team trying to keep them from misbehaving. I was very aware that I was on my own, that had I had something go wrong, that team would not have backed me up. Um, they actually went so far as to assign an officer, a new officer every night to watch me, to keep an eye on me so they could go do whatever they wanted. Now, I'm not stupid. I lived about 4 blocks from the police department, and I would go home for lunch. I knew that they had somebody watching me, so I'd park my patrol car in front of my house, and then I would sneak out the garage, walk back to the police department, and get another patrol car and keep an eye on them. So what a waste of taxpayer money. We're all paranoid watching each other, and the crooks are having their way with the town. It was insane. So just to sum this up really quick, 5 years later, now I'm no longer their supervisor. I've now moved into investigations. It did get worse. Much, much worse. They were committing crimes. They were destroying property. They were beating people up. And it stemmed from that beginning of falling asleep on duty. And as soon as they felt like they could get away with that, they continued that behavior. That is an example of groupthink. When it becomes so important to keep the group together that they will do anything even if it goes against their values and morals. It is a critical concept, probably one that you'll find in one of your movies. So I just want to give you that piece of it as quick as I can, and hopefully that helps. Let me know if it doesn't. We'll try and clear it up. Thank you.